Welcome to A New Capitalism, the podcast that will show you how you can invest your money to help create a more just and prosperous economy for all. Here's Frank Altman.
I'm back with Chef Sherman. We've been talking about his incredible path from growing up on a reservation to becoming a celebrated chef and champion of Indigenous foodways. Sean founded Natives, a nonprofit supporting Indigenous food sovereignty, as well as Awamni, Minnesota's groundbreaking first full-service Indigenous restaurant. Now, Sean, let's pick up where we left off on the Awamni story. Can you tell us more about how you got the restaurant started? I understand the timing presented quite a unique challenge.
We got really lucky that, because try opening up a restaurant during a global pandemic.
Exactly.
Try finding the funding to do that, because we had funding lined up and then the pandemic happened and then the banks would no longer talk to us. They're like, we're not going to fund anything until the entire country is 80% vaccinated, which we know will never even happen. And so we got lucky. We ended up, we found RSF, which helped us out, and we got us to the finish line. So we were very lucky that some of these social funds existed out there to allow us to be able to open up these doors.
Right. In the book, I talk a lot about the new capitalism and the way that individuals, particularly people who are coming into owning or managing assets, investment assets, are beginning to demand different solutions than the kind of solutions that are just pure capitalism. The move from the concept of a corporation existing solely to benefit the shareholders, profit maximization, to the emerging concept now of stakeholder capitalism, and the recognition that a business or a corporation exists to serve all people, particularly all American people, in the words of the Business Roundtable, who adopted a stakeholder capitalism resolution signed by 181 CEOs of the largest companies in the United States. So that is moving. And RSF is an example of a family and an organization that is set up specifically to work in the social sector. So maybe you could talk a little bit more about how that relationship came to be. I do have to say for our listeners that I wish CRF had gotten there first, but we didn't.
Well, we'll have plenty of opportunity because we're going into a lot of expansion, and I'm the executive director of the nonprofit, and it's going to take a lot of support as we grow into these other areas and do the same model, because now we have this model. It works. Awamni is very popular. We've been, like I said, we've been sold out since we opened in July of 21. You've been to the restaurant, so you've seen what it can do, and it's just something different. It's unique, but it shouldn't be so unique. We should see these kinds of restaurants all over the United States, so we're getting ready to market to a lot of tribes, and we're going to need supports out there, so that's why I feel really lucky that we've created these relationships. And when we found RSF, that just really helped us get to that finish line, because we just needed that extra little bit of capital to get those doors open, because it's a lot to open up a restaurant.
Right.
There's
Absolutely.
a
lot of risk.
A lot of risk.
You mentioned restaurants, and bankers generally go pale and start shaking and say, "Yeah." When we invested into just making sure that we're keeping our numbers in line, and we've got some great financial consultants that work with us and just keep everything on a weekly. So we're just watching those numbers constantly, and we're going to continue to grow. We're learning a lot of lessons, of course, as this first big brick and mortar, but it's working. Right now we're in the black, and that's not guaranteed forever. But now that the restaurant's a part of the nonprofit, it does prolong its lifetime, because if it ever does slip a little bit, that might be just an easy grant to help us do better the next year, but we don't have to worry as much as we do as if a restaurant was a part of a for-profit, because then that's just such a hustle. You're just always trying to make ends meet with really expensive foods, we're downtown in Minneapolis with the highest tax rates, and we pay people really well there, and we're trying to be very socially conscious about things. So it's very difficult, but it's a model that we're figuring it out, and it seems to be working, and we're excited to hopefully help open up other restaurants all across the nation in the same manner. I'd like to explore a little bit more with you the way that you're trying to build out this food system, particularly with the tribes, because every restaurant, every business needs suppliers, right? And as you grow, the supply has to grow with the demand. So talk a little bit about sort of your vision for the tribes. If you think about, is it farming? Is it horticulture? idea that these foods have to be either harvested or grown in some way or another at a scale that could support multiple restaurants and perhaps be in stores and in other places. The only native food that I really have seen is taken off, at least to my knowledge, has been manoman, wild rice, which you can get now almost any place, but most of it is no longer cultivated naturally. So talk a little bit about how you envision that system.
We just look at the amazing opportunity because there's so much diversity amongst indigenous communities all over the place, and we look at North America as a whole, from Mexico through Alaska, and every region we've been able to find some food producers, and there's a lot of money going into native agriculture out there, and so we just really want to help continue to raise the demand, help connect people who are producers and growers to be able to purchase a lot of these foods, because we're getting a lot of wild rice, of course, from various tribes across Minnesota, Wisconsin, some up in Canada, lots of things like maple, lots of wild foods. We're working with some small groups that started a business just to harvest wild foods just for us. And we are working with buying all of our bison, for example, from Cheyenne River Sioux tribe, which is growing a lot of bison out there on the plains. And there's other tribes starting to do that. And we're going to create more spaces for that. And the market creates a space where we can help sell and push these products. And we're going to move that into online. We're going to move that into wholesale. We want tribes to be able to buy all these products directly through us, so they don't have to go through all these complex, finding all these vendors all over the nation. And we just want to be a regional center point for them to be able to get all of that stuff. And there's other groups out there. Tokabe is doing a lot of amazing work down in Denver, and they're moving into a lot of philanthropic work and pushing a lot of marketable pieces out there too. And we just want to connect with people out there. We want to connect with a lot of growers, and there's a lot of companies like IAC, which is Intertribal Agricultural Council, who have been working on these issues for a couple of decades now. And, we just want to do our part because we've been kind of leading the charge when it comes to healthy indigenous foods and what's possible for modern indigenous foods, because people, if they know anything about native foods, they might think of fry bread. And that's just something we've never had to do because we cut out, flour and it just doesn't exist in our food system, because there's so much more and there's so much to talk about that can really explain who we are as indigenous peoples. And we try to make recipes that make sense, that this recipe might taste more like Pacific Northwest or Southwest or East Coast or Northeast or Great Plains or Great Lakes or wherever. And there's just so much opportunity out there.
So when you look, 10 years from now or whatever the time frame is, and you say, what does success look like? How do you measure it? What do you see the change that you want to see in the next, say, 10 years?
Well, the 10-year changes I want to see some of the tribes really get invested in this. I want to see the tribes push a lot more money into food production and to really a lot of education in their own community about these foods. I want to see a lot more native food businesses out there so people have access to these foods in native market spaces too. And just seeing a lot more movement, because we're trying to create distribution points on top of spreading out all over the place. We want to be able to move foods back and forth wherever we might lie, whether it's in Montana, Alaska, and beyond, So we just see a lot of opportunity. And if we can get the tribes to really invest into, having these access, in changing the way people think about their own foods, getting people to be very proud of their unique flavors and food profiles of their regions, we might see a lot of impact in health, because we see a lot of bad statistics on a lot of tribes out there because of a lot of poor nutritional access, so we can see some communities with upwards to 60% type 2 diabetes and massive amounts of obesity and heart disease and all these other foodborne illnesses. That's a direct result of this poor nutrition that we have. Trying to influence USDA to have better offerings when it comes to what food offerings they have in the commodity food and FDPIR programs. And there's a lot of opportunity to that, because they should be investing into working with indigenous producers and getting some of those foods into it and being a lot more regional about it, not trying to send food like wild rice all the way to the Southwest or up in Alaska where people don't have the same connection to those kinds of foods, but keeping it regional so we don't have to break the system by trying to purchase too much from a particular region to spread it out too far. So there's a lot of opportunity. So 10 years, I just see a big push of working towards better food sovereignty, which is food security for those communities.
Food sovereignty. Interesting. I love that idea. So how can people who are interested in investing or supporting your efforts, what are the best opportunities for them or the biggest needs that you can see that might be filled by individuals that are getting on the bandwagon?
Well, we're a 501c3, so that's an easy way to just find us and make donations at natifs.org, which is natifs.org. And again, that's North American Traditional Indigenous Food Systems is the full name. But, we also need a lot of partners and connections of people that want to see some of these programs happening in their own regions, So if we move into a place like Oklahoma, we need to find some partners, maybe somebody might have a building or some land space to help us move forward with some of this stuff and we can create these systems that there can be cash flow in these systems. We're using the restaurant for the sole purpose of its cash flow when it comes down to it. Because again, restaurants have too thin of margins to really rely on it, but it does create lots of jobs. It does move a lot of food product, and we can utilize that mechanism to think about things different and to change the way people have access and change the way people think about food in general. People can just, reach out, just find us. And, we want to be all over the place eventually.
I just want to make a comment on that to sort of put it in context. As we mentioned earlier, the Lakota Fund is a community development financial institution certified by the U.S. Treasury. There are more, I think there are upwards of 4,000 of these around the country now, many serving very local areas. There is a whole growing network of native CDFIs that serve a variety of tribes across the country. So there is an opportunity for people who want to be on the financing side of what you're doing to really work with those CDFIs that can take the risk that an RSF would take or others in helping to grow this whole system, whether it's for restaurants, whether it's the nonprofit that you're running, or it's other components of the food chain that need financing to grow, to suppliers, whatever they are. So I want our listeners to be aware of the fact that there are so many of these, and particularly the native CDFIs. Listeners can find information about all these CDFIs on the U.S. Treasury's CDFI Fund website. So that would be a good place to go to find the next upstream for where where the capital flows in.
Absolutely.
And in those communities that you're looking at expanding in, obviously there are many CDFIs that would be interested, I think, in getting behind what you're doing.
Yeah, I believe so too. And, and we want to put the heart of these nonprofit expansions in some of the larger cities, just because there's a lot more resources in the cities, but they just become the regional center point to help develop all around them.
Right.
We're in Phoenix or Albuquerque or in Tulsa or wherever we might land, so we're being very strategic about how we're moving forward this, but it's just this hub and spoke model, basically.
And how important is it that you're focusing on lower income employees, lower income workers, bringing opportunity? So right now you're located in one of the poorest neighborhoods in Minneapolis. The Food Lab is. So how do you see that nexus with your expansion plans?
And we're just creating so many jobs in this particular kind of new sector that just didn't exist. There wasn't really a native food sector out there, and so we have 120 employees during the summertime at Awamni. 70% of the staff there identifies as Indigenous. We've got close to 50 employees at the nonprofit just a few blocks south of there at the Midtown Global Market, so we can be up to 170 employees. We just started. We're just a few years old, really, when it comes down to it. And I've been doing the work since 2014 when I first formed the sous chef a long time ago, but we've come a long way since then. And, so it's a lot, but we're hiring a lot of young people. We're hiring a lot of people that identify as Indigenous. And, when we're doing our best to really have a lot of really great benefits, a lot of great wages, a lot of salaries, and, we're holding on to all that.
So I want to sort of end this by asking you a personal question about how it feels to be who you are right now in this environment. You're one of the Time Magazine's 100 most influential people of 2023. You're winning all sorts of awards, the James Beard Award. Most recently, you won
Julia Child
Award. Yes. So you should, in your own words.
Well, no, it's great. I mean, I feel very honored by all this attention, but the work's never been about me. This work is something much larger. This work should be out there. And I want to change the way kids like myself grew up on the reservation and what kind of food access and knowledge do they have about their culture through their foods and around them. So I feel responsible, and I feel like I have a good amount of energy at this time in my life because I'll be turning 50 in a couple months. I want to just push this out there, but I'm just trying to build a foundation and structure for the next generation to really take this even further than I can in my own lifetime.
Great. I think that's what we all try to do. Particularly at a certain age, you start looking at the next generation. So,
right.
Well, Sean, I really want to thank you for taking time out of a busy schedule to spend some time with me, and I hope that you get a chance to read the book.
Absolutely.
I just want to thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Sean. And thank you for listening to this episode of A New Capitalism. I hope you found value in this discussion as we continue exploring how to build a new and more equitable capitalism. If you enjoyed this episode, we hope you'll subscribe so you don't miss any of our upcoming conversations with innovative leaders driving positive change. Thanks for tuning in. We look forward to having you join us again next time.
This has been A New Capitalism with Frank Altman. If you'd like to connect with Frank and join the movement to create a new capitalism that works for all, go to frankaltman.com. Frank's book is available on print, audio, and ebook formats on all major book-selling sites. A New Capitalism is a production of Forbes Books.